In every corner of the world, from urban markets in Southeast Asia to rural villages in Africa to sprawling cities across Latin America, a subtle but profound transformation has been taking place. The gradual erosion of traditional diets and their replacement by ultra-processed, calorie-dense foods. This shift is not just about individual preference or convenience. It reflects the sweeping influence of globalization on food systems, trade policies, marketing practices, and cultural norms. And one of the most troubling outcomes of this dietary transition is a dramatic rise in national obesity rates, even in countries where undernutrition was the dominant concern just a generation ago. Traditional diets, shaped over centuries of cultural, ecological, and agricultural adaptation, were typically built around whole foods. Legumes, grains, vegetables, fruits, roots, and modest amounts of animal products or fermented foods, depending on region. These meals were often low in added sugars, high in fiber, naturally portion-controlled, and prepared at home. They were not just sources of nutrition, they were expressions of identity, family, and place. But as countries open their economies to global markets, local food systems are rapidly being displaced by industrialized supply chains dominated by multinational food corporations. Ultra-processed foods, UPFs, which include packaged snacks, soft drinks, fast food, and ready-to-eat meals, are now ubiquitous in supermarkets, convenience stores, and increasingly, school cafeterias and hospital vending machines. These products are engineered for maximum palatability, shelf stability, and profit, not for nourishment. This dietary globalization is accelerating faster than many nations can adapt. As rural populations move to cities, lifestyles become more sedentary, cooking time shrinks, and demand for convenient, inexpensive food grows. In response, manufacturers flood emerging markets with highly marketed, heavily processed foods that often mimic Western eating patterns. The result is what researchers call the nutrition transition, a global pattern in which diets become more energy-dense but less nutrient-dense, and health burdens shift from infectious diseases to chronic, diet-related illnesses. Importantly, this shift does not affect all foods equally. Globalized food systems favor the mass production and export of cheap, highly processed ingredients like refined oils, white flour, sugars, and corn syrup, products that are the backbone of industrial food. These are the same ingredients most strongly linked to obesity and metabolic dysfunction. Meanwhile, traditional staples, whether it's millet in India, cassava in Africa, or quinoa in South America, are often priced out of the local market, replaced by inferior substitutes. As a result, national obesity rates have surged across the globe. Countries that once struggled with famine are now battling an obesity epidemic. In Mexico, for example, soft drink consumption has skyrocketed to among the highest in the world, contributing to rising rates of type 2 diabetes even among teenagers. In the Middle East, traditional meals centered around rice, legumes, and vegetables have been overtaken by fried fast food and sugary desserts, with adult obesity rates now exceeding 35% in some Gulf nations. In Pacific Island nations, imported processed foods have replaced fishing and farming traditions, leading to some of the world's highest rates of obesity and diabetes. This is not merely a question of calories consumed. The shift in food quality is arguably even more important than the increase in quantity. Ultra-processed foods are often absorbed more quickly and completely by the body than whole foods, resulting in exaggerated blood sugar spikes, increased fat storage, and hormonal disruptions that promote hunger and fat gain. They are also less satiating, prompting people to eat more frequently and in greater amounts than they otherwise would. These effects are especially dangerous when established during childhood, when eating behaviors and metabolic set points are still forming. Cultural identity is also at stake. As Western-style eating habits spread, traditional food knowledge is lost. Recipes, preparation methods, farming practices, and even communal eating rituals begin to fade. Local cuisines that once provided both nourishment and social cohesion are gradually replaced by standardized, commercialized eating patterns centered around brand-name products and takeout meals. The consequence is not only a decline in diet quality, but a weakening of food culture itself. Still, not all change is negative. In many places, the globalization of food has brought new ingredients, better food safety, and access to a wider variety of foods than ever before. But without policies to safeguard nutritional integrity and cultural heritage, the dominance of processed food will continue to crowd out healthier options. Fortunately, some countries are beginning to recognize this threat and respond. Nations like Brazil and Peru have implemented dietary guidelines that promote whole, minimally processed foods, and discourage industrial food consumption. Front-of-package warning labels, soda taxes, and restrictions on junk food marketing to children are gaining traction in multiple regions. There's also a growing movement to revalue traditional diets, not as relics of the past, but as modern tools for health. The Mediterranean diet, long practiced in Southern Europe, has been rebranded globally as a model for cardiovascular health. Indigenous food systems in the Americas are being revived as sources of ecological and cultural resilience. Even in urban areas, farmers' markets, community gardens, and cooking education programs are helping reconnect people to real food and ancestral practices. The battle against obesity is not simply a fight against excess. It is a struggle to protect food quality, cultural diversity, and metabolic health in an age of industrial abundance. If we hope to reverse the rising tide of chronic disease, we must look not only at what people eat today, but at how their food systems have been transformed. Globalization has made processed calories cheap, accessible, and addictive. Reclaiming the value of traditional, whole food diets through policy, education, and cultural revival offers a more hopeful path forward. In the end, this isn't just about returning to the past. It's about using the best of tradition and modern knowledge to rebuild food environments that nourish both bodies and communities. As cultures adapt to a globalized world, they can and should choose to do so on their own terms, with food systems that reflect their values, support health, and resist the pull of homogenized, hyper-processed diets.